What's up, YouTube? Hope everybody's having an awesome night. As you can see, it's pretty dark outside today, so doing some recording while we've got a little bit of a heat wave coming in. First off, if you're wondering why the music is like the same in just about every video, I got asked the question the other day. It's because I'm using a music app through Streamlabs, and it says it's copyright-free music, but this is the only playlist that I've found that actually doesn't cause YouTube copyright strikes. So every time I try to use a different playlist, some different music, I get like 5 notifications on YouTube that are just, oh, you need to change out like this piece of audio, this other piece, whatever, because it's being copyright stricken by whoever the artist was. And like, doesn't that defeat the purpose of paying for copyright free music? But whatever, just play the same music all the time and we don't have to worry about it. As you can see on the screen, this is clearly not Dimir Death Shadow, which might take a bunch of you by surprise. You might be angry, you might be considering leaving the channel because this is not what you were promised. And I get that. I understand your pain, but tough. We're going to run through some Jund Shadow games anyways. Obviously by the title, a voiceover of a league that I ran. Before anybody asks, and I'm going to go through some of the cards here. No, there was not a lot of pre-prep decision making or a lot of fine tuning with the deck list. I just threw a bunch of cards I wanted to play into a deck and decided to run with it and see what happened. And this is kind of the result of that. So main deck, Bauble and Street Wraith, really good with our new buddy Nethergoyf. Really good with Dragon's Rage Channeler, Tarmogoyf. We've got Shadow and Shadow of Mortality. I wanted a couple more threats. Could not decide for the life of me what to run. So I ended up just like throwing a couple Shadow of Mortality in here to get around some of the Grave Hate. I got 2 Fatal Push, 4 Thoughtseize, 2 Unholy Heat, 4 Lightning Bolt, 1 Dismember. I'll go ahead and give like the a little bit of the spoiler as far as changes I would make to the deck. Shadow of Mortality is not bad. I hate Dragon's Rage Channeler. I don't know what it is. It's fine in Grixis, but in Jund Shadow, like, I just want to get the game over with. Want to hit my opponent. Want to battle rage stuff. And Channeler is just not a good threat at getting the game over with or getting battle raged. I don't know what I would replace it with, but I've been considering just like going 4 Goyf, 4 Shadow, 4 Nethergoyf as my threat base and trying to build around that some more. Maybe I can find some other way to draw cards or some other way to find the threats. Like maybe it involves going back to traverse the Ulvenwald again. I don't know, but just I don't think Ragavan's in a good spot right now, and I don't think Dragon's Rage Channeler is doing the job that I want. You could run Bowmaster just for a little more interaction in that spot, but I decided for Channeler, at least in this first league, see what happened. Shadow of Mortality, the 15 mana, what's the name of that deck? Calibrated Blast. The Calibrated Blast staple costs 1 less for, what is it? Costs X less, where X is your life total? No. How's it worded? Basically, it costs 1 less for every point of life you are below 20. Can't remember how it's worded. But if you're at 7 life, it costs 2 black mana for a 7/7. And so it gets around some of the Grave Hate. It still dodges like Fatal Push, Prismatic Ending really well. Dodges Galvanic Discharge for the most part. In the sideboard, 3 copies of Break the Ice for Eldrazi. Toxic Deluge and 2 Pyroclasm for any of the Go Wide decks like Nadu or Mardu, Boros Energy, Merfolk, Elves, whatever the case may be. You could run a more Deluge, but a lot of these Shadow decks with like Street Wraith are really, really knocking on your life total early. So if you get to a point where you have to Deluge for like 4, that might just be the end of you. 2 Harsh Mentor for Nadu, a Terra Sunder, and a Pick Your Poison for some of the One Ring decks. 2 copies of Veil of Summer, because there's a lot of blue-black Psychic Frog going around right now. A lot of Murktide, a lot of Drown in the Locks. And then 3 copies of Nihil Spellbomb for any of the grave-based shenanigans. So yeah, that's what I decided to throw together. Again, I really have to stress, and I'm sure people are still going to ask in the comments, like, why are you playing this? Why aren't you playing this? This is like first league with Jund Shadow that I've played of the MH3 meta. I have no idea what I want to play yet, but this is just starting somewhere. So let's just go ahead and show some of the games, and we'll figure it out from there. You always got to start somewhere when you're messing around with a build in a new environment. And this is kind of that idea, is just showcasing that process of, hey, what's working, what's not working. Oh, it's got a turn 1 Ragavan. We do Street Wraith into a Bolt, so we got the answer for the Ragavan. Here, Sacred Foundry, Ragavan, Inkmoth Nexus. I don't have the slightest clue what I'm up against. Inkmoth is usually Hammertime. Hammertime or like Hardened Scales. So maybe this is a Hammertime build. I don't know of any Hammertime builds playing Ragavan, but you know, we'll see. Then this little thing. I have never seen Cacophony Scamp before, but when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target, and then when it deals damage, you can sacrifice it and proliferate. I doubt that part matters. I'm assuming the second part is just so, like, if you strap a hammer on it and your opponent kills it, you can just, like, 11 ball them to the face. So, as we saw, Magnetic Theft in hand. They've got another Inkmoth Nexus, a Cauldra, so pretty confident that it is a hammer deck now. But I had to read over the Scamp, take a Path to Exile. So we leave them with a Cauldra and an Inkmoth Nexus. They immediately top deck an Urza Saga, you know, as Hammer typically does. But find a Shadow so we can get down some threats. Got this Sundering Eruption in hand, so maybe we can knock out an Urza Saga and go get an attack in. All right, let me talk about this turn. A little weird, a little awkward. People are probably like, why are you shocking in and then playing Sundering Eruption? So my thought process here was they're likely to just make a Construct. Because Construct pretty good, especially with a couple Inkmoths sitting around. I can bobble their top card to see what they're drawing into, but I can't bobble until after I Sundering Eruption because it's going to shuffle. So if I see something that says like, oh, I don't want to attack, whatever, and shuffle it away, then I wouldn't know their top card. If I don't shock in the Blood Crypt, it means I can't draw into a Fatal Push, a Bolt, Unholy Heat, something like that, which would be really good on my opponent's turn. If I do shock in, then they get to make a Construct here. If they go to their turn, they got Animate double Inkmoth Nexus. The Construct's now a 3/3, plus the Scamp is 4. And if they attack for 4, it means if I ever kill the Scamp, I just die. They can just like hold it back as a chump blocker, and I'll die to that trigger. So I would really like to find a piece of interaction and be able to use it right away. Which is why I decided to shock in the Blood Crypt. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have. The odds were like really low that I actually hit a removal spell. So I think I should have just like played in that Blood Crypt tapped. And if I had played it in tapped, then I think I could have safely I could have safely attacked this turn with both. That'd be at 7. Construct would be at 3/3. Plus the Scamp at 4. They'd have to top deck like... what, a hammer this one turn? But I think that was kind of my fears. If they did top deck a hammer, then I wouldn't have untapped mana if I did draw into a removal spell if I played the Blood Crypt tapped. Lot going on. And then top deck a push. This should have just been an attack with everything turn. There's no reason to hold back the Shadow Mortality. Then we find a Lightning Bolt. So I know their last card's Cauldra. I feel pretty okay in this spot. Get the double chump. Pass the turn. The push and a bolt. Attacking with the Scamp. So I'm expecting like a hammer, which they don't use. So I was a little bit kind of surprised there, and then they just bolted me, and I'd never expected bolt out of them. I'm gonna be honest. Like when you Thoughtseize early on and you see Path to Exile, I'm really not expecting there to be paths and lightning bolts in your hammer deck. Like I just figured there's not enough room. But bolt was not on my radar at all. Good for them, bad for me. Either way, on to game number 2. Board out a bunch of Wraiths, board out some Thoughtseizes. I thought about boarding in Pyroclasm, but eventually decided not to because it doesn't answer Sanctifier on Vec. So if they got that, I'm kind of in some trouble. Get the lucky top deck of the green source to be able to pick your poison away the Sigarda's Aid. Now I've got some ferocious, or not ferocious, Delirium enabled Dragon's Rage Channelers. See a Lightning Bolt on top of our library. I think I should have not searched there. I had enough lands, and I could have just had a Lightning Bolt. And instead, I fetched away, and opponent decides to just go for it, which I was also not expecting them to just go for it into 4 open mana there, but if their back was against the wall and they didn't have a great hand, I get it. Either way, on to round number 2. Unfortunate loss to pick up in round 1. I feel like Hammertime... it's not a bad matchup for Shadow decks, but I also recognize that I cut back on like pick your poisons and K commands and stuff that's typically good in that matchup. I'm just not expecting it. So, round 2, we got Merfolk. Good old fishy boys. Gotta remember to take the mouse off the screen next time. It's a little distracting. Oh well. So we got our Harbinger. They are gonna kind of lock us off of some of our mana here. But with this bauble here, we do get Dragon's Rage Channeler just being like enabled. So we can still get a pretty good clock on our opponent. They got a Dismember coming off the top. Well, guess what? So do we. Justice. So we'll block, go for the Dismember on the Harbinger, like make them do something here. I guess there's something is sacking their Hex Catcher to a Flare of Denial, which is fine with me because, again, I'm just going to hit my opponent for a really big chunk of damage. If they want to Dismember something, great. Sink into Stupor instead. That's also cool. We put them down to 1 with the Dismember that they can no longer cast. And opponent scoops it up. We go to game 2. Sideboarding against Merfolk, boarding out like a bunch of the Wraiths, boarding out a Thoughtseize. boarding in all my Wrath effects, my 2 Pyroclasms, my Toxic Deluge, and then usually board in Veil of Summer as well. Veil being able to hit like a Tidebinder, a Spreading Seas, a Merfolk Trickster, really big deal to be able to hit. So we Thought Seize them. We see Harbinger, Merfolk Trickster, and a Harbinger of the Tides. Take the Harbinger of the Seas because it stops us from playing any more Magic. And if there's one thing I know about playing Magic, it's that the best part of Magic is playing more Magic. So opponent's got another Harbinger of the Seas. So in this game, they have Spreading Seas us, Tide Shapered us, and had double Harbinger of the Seas. So pretty unfortunate turn of events. Getting locked out of red, really tough here. Since we do have the basic swamp, it's not so bad with the black. Like, opponent's clearly heavy on the land disruption plan with main deck Harbinger of the Seas, Spreading Seas, Tide Shaper, which I don't hate. I think if like you're gonna play Merfolk in 2024, this is probably a good way to go about it. Especially with a lot of the Flages and Eldrazi running around. So he's like, stop your opponent from getting Flage back. Also, I'm a big Spreading Seas fan in general, so you know, I approve of that message. So last turn, attacking with a Shadow, because if we trade off Shadow for a couple of their guys and we have a Nethergoyf backup, that's good for us. If they did decide to like Trickster the Shadow or something, we'd have the follow-up Nethergoyf. Probably could have just attacked with both and played the backup Nethergoyf. Like either way, if our opponent has like a Lord, we're dead regardless. So the extra attack probably doesn't matter. And as we can see, we were in fact aggressively dead to a Lord, so we get to go to game 3. Then pretty cool hand with Shadow of Mortality. Don't want another land, but I do want to lower my life total pretty aggressively, pretty quickly. So they got Dismember, take the Sink into Stupor, because now they just have Island Otawara, so they got to play out this Otawara as a land, hopefully. Gives them one less way of dealing with like Shadow of Mortality. Couple removal spells. I'll go ahead and kill off the Tide Shaper. I really want the Pyroclasm to eat more than just the Tide Shaper. Fetch and Shock so that we can get down our Shadow of Mortality this turn. We kind of have to just hope they don't have a Harbinger of the Seas off the top. But if they do, there's really nothing I can do. Subtlety, ditch Lord of Atlantis. Like, I was really expecting the Harbinger here, and when they didn't have it, I was very much shocked and surprised. But got a Tide Shaper. We know about a Dismember. 2 unknown cards in hand. I don't want it by my Shadow Mortality getting dismembered, so they just play another Tide Shaper. And I do get to Pyroclasm the board here. I kind of figured, like, if they block and they're planning on blocking and dismembering, they kill my Shadow Mortality. If they don't block, then they're going to get to dismember my Shadow Mortality after I Pyroclasm anyway. So I might as well just, like, go for the attack, try to get the extra damage in. And thankfully that worked out. But either way, we've got Nethergoyf v Master of the Pearl Trident with the Svelun on top. And since I see that, I know the coast is clear. Because if they play out the Sphy or anything else, then I just get to Sundering Eruption next turn, make my Nethergoyf unblockable, and attack in for lethal. Which is exactly what we get to do. So Sundering Eruption, pretty fun MDFC addition to Jund Shadow. For 3 mana, you get to blow up a land, and its owner gets to search for a basic. But it makes everything without flying unable to block for the turn. So get you a board of like Nethergoyfs and Shadow Immortality, whatever, Sundering Eruption something, and swing in for lethal. I think if Jund Shadow is a variant that I'm interested in playing more of in the future, I think I'm going to go up on the number of Sundering Eruptions. Like right now, I have a Sundering Eruption and a Boggart Trawler, the black MDFC that exiles a graveyard. I've got that in there right now just to try to have a little interaction, but I wouldn't mind having an extra Sundering Eruption and just like move the Harbinger to the sideboard or something. But we Surveil into a Nethergoyf. I could bin it and try to cycle the Wraith into something better, but decided like, hey, the Nethergoyf's a pretty good card to have access to anyway. Casting this Sundering Eruption to try to give the Delirium to the Dragon's Rage Chandler because I don't have a sorcery, and pump both of the Nethergoyfs by 1. I kind of figured they'd had a Trickster to flash in and shrink a Nethergoyf. But Tidebinder essentially meets the same fate of just like not being able to block. Assume they're going to double block here with this Sphy, so pretty free to attack. Get this Sphy off the battlefield. They do have a counter spell for the Nethergoyf, but we just get to recast it from the yard. I have been seeing Flare of Denial out of Merfolk. I'm really not a fan of it. I think that like the just play creatures side of Merfolk's really good, and you don't really have to go with this whole sideboard, like, or not sideboard, but whole try to be a control deck juke with a bunch of like Force of Negations and Flare of Denials. It always looks really bad when Flare involves like sacking your only guy to counter something. Alright, so this is game 2, I believe. Opponent Stern Scolding's my Dragon's Rage Channeler, which I was not expecting. More Tideshaper shenanigans. But yeah, we are playing Merfolk in back-to-back rounds, if you couldn't tell. That definitely caught me off guard. So I've got Dismember to take out Tideshaper. I do have to take a really big chunk of damage to do so. But if they haven't found anything, then it will let me like stabilize on board a good bit. Play a Tarmogoyf. Hope they don't have a land or a Dismember. And they do in fact have the Dismember, so we're dead to the Mutavault. Either way, that's why we get game 3. But if all of the Merfolk lists are going up on like Spreading Seas, then it doesn't really matter if you fetch out your basics early. They're still going to have some way to keep you off of that. So I don't have a great plan for that approach just yet. We'll see if I can come up with anything. But either way, this game we know about a Merfolk Trickster in their hand, which is why I'm not attacking with the Tarmogoyf, because I don't want them to just flash in the Trickster, remove the Tarmogoyf's ability to increase its power, and then have a free, like, eat block there. Which is the whole reason I'm being kind of conservative with the attacks. Like, I should have just attacked there, but I didn't really want to push the Trickster. I'd rather push the Mutavault. So, little glad I waited. They've got an Otawara in hand that I know about, so I'm kind of trying to make it so that they have to play out the Otawara as a land instead of being able to hold it for a bounce, like an end of turn bounce something, untap attack. Double Lord and a Tideshaper, so they could hit me for a chunk here, decide not to. Let's talk about this attack. So I attack him with my double shadow because if my opponent just says no blocks, then I dismember and I've got lethal. Just pay 4 life, shadows grow to 6/6, have lethal. I was really expecting like a double block to kill a shadow, and I was going to dismember one of the 2 unblocked guys, try to grow past whatever was blocking. And then Flare of Denial was a big consideration, because if I dismember something and they Flare sack the dude that was blocking to counter it, then they could just hit a Lord on the crackback to kill me. But if they don't have Flare into Lord, then I get to do something like what happened right here, where my opponent blocks my 2/2 Shadow with a 4/4, and I get to pay 2 life, kill a Lord. Let's fast forward a little bit. Pay 2 life, kill a Lord. This, if they don't have the Flare sacking the Trickster, means that the Trickster is going to shrink because the Lord's no longer there. Shadow eats the Trickster. I get in for 4 points of damage, and now I'm not even dead to a Lord on their side on the crackback. If they play a Lord, they hit in for 3 with the Master, 4 with the Tide Shaper. I'm at 9. So then I've got just like shadows coming back on the other side. So fairly safe attack there. I don't think there's any way that they can like mass block and really take me out. And then here, attacking him with everything, because they do have to block 2 things. Like if the Nethergoyf goes untouched, then the shadows are lethal. If one of the shadows in the Nethergoyf goes untouched, then that's lethal. So they have to block 2 creatures. I kind of expected like chump on the shadow, keep something like the Harbinger around, but they decided to double up on one of the shadows. I'm guessing they forgot that the Lord was giving the buff to the Tide Shaper. So now when the Lord dies, the Tide Shaper dies to state-based actions at the end of combat. And now I'm just left with a Shadow and a Nethergoyf and a couple bolts. And that's a pretty good spot to be. So opponent commits a ritualistic offing of themselves with Dismember. I respect it. On to match number 4. Pretty good aggressive Street Wraith hand. Little Thoughtseize mixed in. So we see we're up against Nadu. We've got Bolt for the Delighted Halfling on turn 2. We just need to find some pressure, which thankfully Nethergoyf provides, and hope we can start swinging pretty aggressively. They're a little ways off of Corda Calling. They did pick up a Nadu there, so thankfully that's axed. And then picking up 3rd land, also really good, so we can play out Tarmogoyf and hold up interaction. Get themselves a construct. I believe they find a copy of Bristly Bill here. Yeah, Bristly Bill Spine Sower. If you haven't seen this card, another one of these new value pieces. This one's from Thunder Junction. It's a 2/2 for 2 with landfall. Whenever land enters, you put a 1/1 counter on something. So in the Nadu deck, it allows you on your go off turn to put all of your landfall counter triggers onto like a creature that doesn't have summoning sickness, or like a flying Nadu or something, and allow you to just fly over or attack in with one big attacker there. It's like an alternative to the Endurance Loops or the Thassa's Oracle win. So either way, we're going to go for the end of turn push on the bill. We know they have the cord for 1. In this case, it's a cord for a Sylvan Safekeeper. But if I don't go for the fatal push, then they're still going to have that on my turn anyway. It doesn't really like stop that from happening. And then this was a really interesting situation. So I decide that if I attack in and my opponent doesn't block, like the bolt's lethal, that would be great. If they do block with the Safekeeper, then I can let the damage happen and then lightning bolt the bristly bill in second main phase, because I don't want them to untap with access to the Misty Rainforest if possible. So we go to combat, and I thought about it and realized that the correct play for my opponent here, the thing I can't do anything about, is if they block with the Sylvan Safekeeper, and before damage, sack the Yavimaya, targeting the Bristly Bill. And the reason this is so problematic is it forces me to respond to the sack of the Yavimaya with Bolt on the Bristly Bill, in which case they can sack the Misty Rainforest and then give Shroud again to the Bill, untap, kill me with their 2 guys, and there's not really anything I can do about it. If I don't go for the removal spell, then I risk them being able to play the Otawara, cord for 3, and get a Nadu, and then I'm just completely dead. So, like, I have to make something happen here. But finally kind of decide, like, that's such a convoluted line that I don't really expect my opponent to see, and I'm just going to attack. It's like, if they block the Tarmogoyf, sack the Yavimaya, I respond to the Bolt, they sack the Misty, I just lose the guys on board. If they sack the Yavimaya and I don't respond with the Bolt, then they go to their turn, attack with both. Whichever one I go to Bolt, they sack the Misty and landfall trigger with the Bristly Bill, put a counter on the one that I target. Or in this case, like Otawara before going to combat, put a counter onto the Construct, attack, sack the Misty, you get it. So yeah, it's a weird line that I just have to hope that my opponent doesn't see. Thankfully they don't, and they take 9, and I bolt them in the face. But I thought it was really interesting to kind of work that line out mentally and realize, oh, there's a line here that my opponent can make that's not intuitive, that makes it so that I have to have 2 removal spells to win. And if I don't, I just die. So, good times. Sideboarding against Nadu, like sweepers are coming in, any spot removals coming in. If you've got any sort of pithing needle effects, those are usually coming in. Artifact hate for Shuko. But I kept kind of a slow hand on the play and just hoping that they don't have exactly Nadu in hand. And this Pyroclasm might be able to wipe out some things like Halflings, like Nantuko. But alas, they do have the ability to get the Nadu. And they're just going to go off from here. I let them go through everything just so I could see the deck list. And it was just pretty stereotypical Thassa's Oracle win condition. I would say if you're interested in playing Nadu and you're wanting to pick it up online, I would play Thassa's Oracle just for clock considerations. I know during the Pro Tour they talked a lot about, oh, Thassa's Oracle is like the training wheels of Nadu. But for clicking it out on Moto, save yourself the trouble. Play the Thassa's Oracle. Just get the game over with. But game 3, really good hand on the play. We've got a turn 1 Nethergoyf. We've got removal spells. We've got a board wipe. Hard to ask for much more. Little Springheart Nantuko off the top. Thoughtseize off the top of my library is a really good pickup. So, decide to dismember. If I didn't see a spell on top that I wanted access to, I was probably just going to Pyroclasm away the Halfling. And the reason being that if they had a Wall of Roots on turn 2, then I needed the Dismember to answer the Wall of Roots. But when I saw the Thoughtseize and realized that was something I wanted access to, then it became, okay, I'm just going to wait and dismember this. Hope they don't have Wall of Roots, which turns out they did, but they also had a Lush Portico. But now I think... okay, let's... Another sequence moment. So opponent had a Shuko, decided to take that, leave them with double Nadu, because I didn't have answer for the second Nadu anyway. And I didn't want them to find a land and have like land, Nadu, Shuko, or Wall of Roots Shuko with like double Nadu in hand or something like that. Or Wall of Roots Spring Heart land. So I decided to go off the assumption that like, oh, my opponent can't top deck both a land and a Shuko this turn. If they play out the Nadu, I can deluge everything away. If they play like Wall of Roots, Nantuko, land, then that's really good for me in the face of deluge. If they play Wall of Roots, Nantuko, even if they don't have land, it's really good with deluge. So, bunch of options there. But I think getting Nethergoyf up to a 4-5 means any combination that they play here is really good for me into Toxic Deluge. And then seeing like this where they don't hit their land is even better. We can attack in with the Nethergoyf first. If they block with the Wall of Roots, I'd just Pyroclasm the board. Since they don't block with the wall, we do have to Deluge for 4 to take it out. But, like I said, since our opponent missed their land drop, that gives us a pretty good chance here to pull ahead. Find another Nantuko. So they do have one blind card in hand. We top deck a Unholy Heat. Important to note here that you want to go for the Unholy Heat on the Spring Heart. Attack and then bolt them. You do not want to Pyroclasm, because if the last blind card is an Endurance, then if I Pyroclasm, they'd be able to Endurance, Ditch, and Nadu, exile my yard. Nethergoyf would die to state-based actions, and I'd be kind of like SOL there. But Unholy Heat, really good draw on the Nantuko to be able to hit it and bolt them to the face. If they had a land and they had played Nadu, well, nothing would have changed if they had land Nadu. If I didn't draw the Unholy Heat, I'm probably just attacking and passing if they block. Well, actually, if I didn't draw the Unholy Heat, I'm casting the Pyroclasm and attacking. The reason being is if they drew the Endurance, the outcome is the same, right? They block with the Spring Heart, and then Endurance post-combat, exile my yard, Nethergoyf dies, I don't have a yard. So it's like same outcome either way of Nethergoyf being in the yard. They don't take damage. But the upside, if their last card is not exactly Endurance, is they just lose the game. So yeah, I'm definitely going for the Pyroclasm if I don't draw the Unholy Heat there. But when I draw the Unholy Heat, it becomes, okay, there is a definitively better play to make. And there are reasons to make that play instead of just going for Pyroclasm or whatever burn spell you have. Alright, so we don't find the second land. We're up against our third land. Green source. You know what I mean. We don't find the green source. We're up against some sort of island preordained deck, which could be Psychic Frog, could be Murktide, could be a whole number of stuff. But we do find the green source now, which means we can attack it with our Nethergoyf, get down to Tarmogoyf. So many Goyfs. Goyf Tribal, Goyfception. Yo, dog, I heard you like Goyfs. So we Goyfed your Goyf so you can Goyf while you Goyf. Mishra's Bauble, really good pickup because that's going to grow our Goyfs. Get them for a big chunk. Play out another one. Nope, counterspell. Got it. Yeah, fifth Goyf. Fourth Goyf? I don't remember what Goyf. And opponent's looking pretty dead. Oh. Manamo. Manamo One Ring. Got it. All the pieces are coming together now. I can't imagine they play any Wraths in the main deck, but I've been wrong before. Either way, I can't let my opponent untap anymore. I know that I have lethal on my turn, but if they have exactly Bowmaster Fatal Push, then they would be able to Fatal Push, like Fatal Push a Tarmogoyf, flash in Bowmaster, block a Nethergoyf, block a Tarmogoyf, exile stuff to jump the frog, ditch some stuff, block Channeler, or just like block a Nethergoyf or whatever. So they do have an out to not die here, but if I point the lightning bolt at them on their turn, either they die to the lightning bolt or they have to counterspell it, in which case they no longer have access to Fatal Push and Bowmaster. So this is the safe play. It also means they can't force a negation on their turn. So that's why I bolt there instead of like go to my turn and see what I draw or anything. Sideboarding against blue-black control. Took out some Temur Battle Rages because of all the spot removal. Lightning Bolt because it doesn't do a good job into Frog and doesn't kill Shieldred at all. Brought in some Veil of Summers. Brought in Nihil Spellbomb. Pick your poison and tear asunder for the One Ring. That stuff. I ended up bringing in Harsh Mentor too, just because I wanted to, you know, like maybe see it in a game. I figured with Fetch Lands, Manamo, the One Ring, Psychic Frog, they had a lot of activated abilities, so like maybe it would have some text. Not gonna lie, I'm not 100% sold on it. I was just grasping for reasons to bring it in because I put the card in the sideboard. I might as well bring it in. To Veil of Summer and Archmage's Charm here. Which is pretty dope. So opponent does have a copy of the One Ring. Get to sack that off. Play out a Harsh Mentor. Which they Subtlety. So I'm going to take that as meaning that Harsh Mentor was a good decision. And then I was just attacking because I was like, oh, they got protection from the ring. I think. Maybe. I can't remember. Let's just attack and find out. But they did have protection from the One Ring. So instead we got to go to our turn, dismember. Or we could have Unholy Heated. One way or the other, the Shieldred was dying. And we were attacking him for lethal. So, let's go over the deck. Let's go over changes I would make. Things I thought were interesting. Things I thought were terrible. As far as the main deck goes, Dragon's Rage Channeler, I hate with a passion. I've hated Dragon's Rage Channeler for, I don't know, ever since 2 weeks after MH3 dropped and I realized Ragavan was better than Dragon's Rage Channeler. But again, like I said at the beginning of the video, I recognize that Ragavan's not in a fantastic spot right now, so I can understand not wanting to play it. But that doesn't make me suddenly just love Dragon's Rage Channeler. So I would rather cut those and find a replacement. Shadow Immortality was fine. It's been a meme card for forever. I don't think it's a good fit in this deck, but sometimes you're just desperate for straws. I could see cutting the mortalities, the Shadow Mortality and the Dragon's Rage Channelers for like Bowmasters and something else. I thought about playing a few Inquisitions. So just dropping like 2 Shadow Mortality for 2 Inquisition, 2 Channeler for 4, or 4 Channeler for 4 Bowmaster. Something like that would be fine. I thought about running Traverse the Ulvenwald. I thought about running some stuff like Tarfire just to get more card types. And really like buff up Nethergoyf and Tarmogoyf. I thought about... What was the other thing I thought about? Thought about Wrenn and 6. Like, there's options. I just don't really love any of them. Like, before MH3 dropped, I was absolutely on fire with Jun Shadow running Fable the Mirror Breaker and Croxa, because Scam was such a big part of the meta. There was a lot of blue-white, blue-black control decks running around, and Croxa was so phenomenal against those matchups that the value engine Fable Croxa gave you really allowed you to carry over into the mid to late game. And since there was so much like good early interaction going on, you didn't have to worry about like your threats being dealt with. You were going to get to rebuild into the mid to late game. But now, like, the creatures are so aggressive, so impactful, so relevant early on, like Guide of Souls and a Johnny and Psychic Frog, Tameo, all that stuff, that you really have to play good interaction early, and you can't afford to dirtle. And that's kind of what Fable and Croxa was, is you were dirtling for a bit. And Channeler, to me, feels like it's falling back into that trap of doing some dirtling. Like, you maybe get to hit for 3 a few times, and that's great, but 3 doesn't really end games. Like, you have to follow up Channeler with an actual threat and get real pressure going, the same way that Boros Energy is getting Guide of Souls to make everything real threats and get pressure going. So I do think Channeler needs to be replaced in the deck. Fatal Push could just be like 2 more Unholy Heat, and I think that would be perfectly salvageable. In the sideboard, Break the Ice is probably fine if you see Eldrazi. Clearly we didn't. Deluge. Pyroclasm I've been pleasantly surprised with. I think that card's performed very, very well if you want a sweeper effect and don't want to lose the life for Toxic Deluge. Harsh Mentor, probably fine. Like, I think the win rate against Nadu is still positive, so I don't feel like I have to have Mentor. So that could be something else that maybe impacts some of the bad matchups, you know, like red-white Hammer Time. Terra Sunder, pick your poison. I will admit that the Hammer Time matchup looked a lot worse because I cut back on a lot of my artifact and enchantment hate. Only 1 pick your poison, no K commands. Just haven't seen Zoo, haven't seen pick your poison matchups, so that could be something to consider. Veil of Summer, I do think is really, really good right now. I think there's a lot of these blue-black Murktide Frog decks running around. There's a lot of mono-black running around. Veil of Summer, absolutely excellent in both of those matchups. The Nihil Spell Bombs, basically, outside of Tarmogoyf, I don't care about your graveyard. I'm already growing my own graveyard a decent bit for Nethergoyf, so Nihil Spell Bombs just like probably best grave hate piece you can get access to, since it replaced itself. So replace Channeler, replace Shadow of Mortality, swap out Boggart Trawler for another Sundering Eruption, figure out what the heck you're doing with the sideboard, and that's basically what you can do to Jun Shadow if you want to take this shell and run with it. But as always, thank you all so much for checking out the video. Greatly appreciate all of the feedback, all the comments. Let me know down below what shadow variation you're curious about seeing. I'm probably going to do some Grixis videos next, maybe Rakdos. I don't know. You could very easily take this shell and play Rakdos, but I do like having Tarmogoyf, so I might be biased. But let me know what kind of shadow variant you're looking for next. Maybe we can get some videos of it. Other than that, hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now. Oh. Links down below. Deck list, Twitter, in case you want to catch a live stream. Discord, in case you want to come join the Control Freak Discord. And Twitch, so you can see a live stream. That's all I got. Have an awesome rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. Catch you back live later. Adios for now.